Hey, good morning, everybody. Or afternoon, as it were, sorry. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. We had a lot of RSVPs. We knew this would be a popular topic, but I don't think I was expecting quite the response we got. So I hope that this will be a both informative webinar for you and one that provokes some curiosity and reflection around what you can do and what your students can do to help make the most of this very crazy time that we are currently living in. My goal is to give you some practical advice, but also open up some of those broader questions for you. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to keep everybody muted, but if you do have a question, please chat it. If you don't know how to use the chat function, when you kind of mouse towards the bottom of the Zoom window, you should see the option to open up a chat. I've sent a couple of chats so far as we've been waiting. If you want to chat your question there, when we get to the question and answer time, I can, pick questions from there or answer them as we find them relevant. We might answer some of them in the course of this presentation. So with that, I am just going to get started. So I hope everyone can see my screen. If you can't, please put something in the chat, and we'll just take it from here. Oop, that is not where I wanted to start. I clicked in the wrong spot. Here we go. Okay, so school is at home, how to keep your kid learning and not driving you crazy. I have a 2-year-old at home and things are really crazy here. My door is locked, so hopefully we won't have any interruptions, but I hope I can ask for your patience if we do have one. We had to call this school is at home because that's sort of the one thing that seems common across all the various different types of school closings versus school pauses and remote learning and all of the things. So that's sort of some context on the title, but we'll dig into that in a little bit. Let's get started here with our intro. I want to give you an overview of our topics today. I want to spend a little time talking about our current moment. And then we'll talk about what even is school right now. If you have a teenager, you'll understand that kind of diction. It's more of an existential question than anything. We'll talk about efficacy, how effective is are the various options that school is turning to, how to make the most of this time, and then I want to offer you some resources, including myself, of course. So let's dig in here. So our current moment is completely unprecedented, and I want that to sink in. I think everyone is dealing with this crisis in their own way. Everyone has their own stress, emotions, family, job, stress to deal with. But let's just remember that we as a society have never been through anything like this before. And so that leaves all kinds of uncertainty and all kinds of challenges that we shouldn't just ignore. And physical and mental health should, of course, be everyone's top priorities right now. This can be very stressful. As I said, family stress, work stress, school stress, but your children have never seen anything like this either. And depending on the information they're hearing from other people or they're reading or that you're sharing with them, they may be really scared and anxious. And so that's an aspect of this situation that I hope everyone is paying close attention to. Physical and mental health should be everyone's priority here. At the same time, I understand that you're all here to hear about what we should be doing about academics. So we'll talk about that, of course. But as we consider the unprecedented nature of this situation, we also have to accept that in so many ways, this is going to be messy. And with that, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to be kind to each other. We have to be forgiving. We all can't be perfect parents and perfect homeschool instructors at the drop of a hat, especially in such a stressful situation. So keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to flip a switch and have homeschool set up or get your student to do all the things you would love for them to do in this time. It's going to take work. It's going to take really good communication, and it's going to take a lot of forgiveness and patience. I also want to point out that learning remotely is not exactly analogous to working remotely. They each have their own challenges. Many of you may be very comfortable working remotely. I personally am. Family stuff a while ago took me away from the headquarters of Signet's office, which is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where all of my colleagues work. I currently work from Los Angeles, and I've been doing this for about a year and a half now, and I'm very comfortable with it, and my team seems very comfortable with it as well. But I've had to remind myself that, for my 2-year-old, it's not going to be an easy change. For my husband, it's not going to be an easy change. And so I've had to be very patient and forgiving as well. And of course, all of this is now happening within one physical space, the home. And so it's very hard for all of these things to be happening at the same time. I know that in about an hour, my student has, my 2-year-old, again, has a Zoom lesson with his preschool class. I'm sure you can imagine what kind of a circus that is. But that's in the middle of my workday. So we all have these things to balance. And like I said, it's just going to be messy. So let's just accept that from the start. With that out of the way, we need to talk about what even is school right now. Students from preschool to college are given all kinds of different options to continue their learning. Some of them have been sent home with readings and homework packets. Some of them are just being assigned pre-recorded videos and practice work from some sort of online website or module. There may be an adaptive practice module where, sort of like Khan Academy, the student may do some practice problems. Depending on how they do, different practice problems are set up for them next. And then I think the majority of students are getting these sort of live face-to-face sessions with teachers. And those are usually going to be one teacher to many students. And in some cases, it may be one-to-one, like in a tutoring situation or certain school situations. And then I think schools are really leaning on a combination of these things throughout. It is rare that I have heard school has been dismissed without any expectation for student work. There may be some rough guidelines, some vague instructions, or they may be kind of working on a plan for you. But I don't think I've heard of a concrete case where, school is just dismissed and no one is given anything to continue their education. If that is your situation, please do call me because I would love to talk through that situation with you. So given that school is happening in all these ways, it's very difficult to define school anymore. And students are obviously feeling very confused and stressed about these changes. And depending on what has been provided to you from school, you may need to do certain aspects of a student's education. You may need to provide yourself, or you may need to support it in some ways, or in some situations you could just sort of step back, particularly with older students who may be a little bit more motivated and driven. Hopefully you can step back a little and let them kind of handle their own education. But I know that that is a really ideal situation that many of us are probably not facing right now. So let's talk about some of the differences. So there's some obvious differences. Students are not leaving your home to go to school, and another teacher is not sort of responsible for their day, which is usually like a 6 to 8 hour day, depending on your age of your student. And so beyond that, there are many other aspects that will be different for your students. So the types of assignments that they're getting and the assessments. So are they getting quizzes? Are they getting tests? Or do they have to write papers? How is anyone assessing their learning? Their interactions with peers and teachers, both in and outside of the classroom, and interactions with mentors may be different or lacking. The effects of that are very hard to kind of quantify and describe, but that is certainly a reason we send our students to school, so that they can have that social interaction, learn from other adults, learn from their peers, and that is necessarily going to be different right now. The classroom and school day setting, structures, and routines are either gone or just different. And that can do a lot to unsettle a student. Emotional stress levels and family tensions, now that everyone's home, that is adding to this. And then there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty around grades, what they mean, how they get them, standardized tests with dates being canceled, who knows when we're going to have a next one. The college application process will necessarily have to factor in this crisis, and we don't know how they're going to do that yet. And then career prospects for older students as well look pretty dire. So that is probably an underlying level of anxiety, or cause for an underlying level of anxiety for all of the things that we're talking about here. And then a new line of why does this matter questioning. Your students have probably asked you that, why does geometry matter? Or why does this, random type of science matter if I want to be, an English major or something? But now that kind of question is going to have a more of a existential flavor. Why does this matter? Why are we even doing this? And that's probably a very natural reaction for students, given all of these factors that we just talked through. So it's another big question to consider. How do you respond to that? How do you keep students motivated towards moving forward and continuing with their education while balancing, space and time for them to deal with the very real emotional and mental health stresses that they're facing right now? So that's a very tricky thing that all families have to balance right now. So I don't really have any answers to how you do that, but I think, as we dig into virtual learning or remote school or however you want to call it, I know one of the big questions that we get is it effective? And I like to say first questions first. What is the effect you want this to have? And what is the effect your students want to have? Those are two questions that we really need to dig into, and we'll get into how you can do that when I get to my more practical advice section. But those are very important questions, I think, that all of this needs to start with. What do you want to achieve? Is achieve the right word? It may be preserve. It may be survive. So, think about those questions before you start mandating a strict schedule, or we have to get these things done, or you need to maintain these grades. Those may be the priorities for your student, but that should come through a discussion of, what do we want to achieve or do with this time? If we are going to ask, are these virtual learning methods effective for learning academic content, then the answer is a little simpler. It's a yes. Numerous studies, peer-reviewed published studies have shown the effectiveness of online learning. A lot of those studies specifically focus on live one-on-one tutoring, and this is true across disciplines. We've also seen this, we're friendly with a lot of other tutoring businesses, and one of them actually did a study of test scores. I think it was SAT or ACT scores. They controlled it for, starting scores and ending scores, looking at a group of students that were doing online tutoring versus in-person tutoring, and they had the same results. So we know that it works, and, Signet's been doing this for 15 years now, and we've had a lot of success with our online tutoring. The determining factor in whether a remote learning or virtual learning situation is going to work for a student, is going to be effective for a student in terms of learning content, is usually student engagement. How invested is a student in learning this material or improving this skill? That's really going to determine how well they do. And that's also often true for the typical traditional school environment. Student engagement is kind of a key factor. So how do we keep students engaged? If we think about the role of engagement in a typical school setting, as I said, it still is a factor. The students' relationship with their peers, with their teachers, their own feelings of confidence or inadequacy regarding content material, that can all affect their level of engagement. Of course, there are other complicating factors too. If there are any learning differences, social emotional issues, other kinds of challenges to them accessing school, that can all play a role in their engagement. So this may be complicated beyond just now we're online versus, they were sitting in a classroom and we're sort of this captive audience. So I do want to be sensitive to that. If your student is facing any of those other issues that is causing them to disengage or not engage as much as you would hope, please contact me and we can talk about that. I'll give you some, tips in this presentation, but of course, every student is different, every family is different, and I want to honor that. So in our experience of online tutoring for the past 15 years, we have learned that the relationship between the student and the tutor is absolutely key. It's fundamental. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we understand both the student's challenges, the student's preferences in terms of learning, how they seem to learn best, and the type of people they seem to like learning from. And we try to recommend a tutor that we think will spark that kind of love of learning and curiosity in the student, and be a good role model for the student and just have a great relationship with the student. And that way, when they get to the hard stuff, the student will at least be invested in the invested in the relationship, and therefore may be a little more willing, a little more adventurous to try the things that come a little more difficultly to them. One question I always get from parents when I suggest online tutoring, they worry that their students won't be able to build a relationship with just this floating head on a screen as I have right now. But what we've seen actually in our experience is the opposite. Students are often more willing to engage with a person online for two main reasons. These are not this is not science. This is sort of our best guess, but anecdotally we found it to be true. Sometimes the screen kind of helps. Many students are afraid to ask for help. They don't want to participate in class. They don't want to answer a question. They don't want to draw that attention to themselves. But sometimes the screen is sort of a nice barrier, and you feel like you can be a little more open. And there's this kind of firewall of technology between you and another person that can sometimes make students feel like, oh, this is a place where I can ask for help or I can struggle and that's okay. So sometimes the screen actually helps. The other thing is that this is definitely a generational difference. I think so many students now are used to, beyond social media, they're used to FaceTiming or Skyping or WhatsApping with their friends, texting with their friends, sending pictures back and forth. Their relationships actually are online now. And so it doesn't really take an in-person meeting in order to start that relationship. It can be started online. And then the next question I get from parents when they're considering online is, what if the student is doing something else on their computer? Are they going to be responding to text or scrolling Instagram or whatever? And I always tell them they're not that slick. Like you could tell right now I'm looking at my screen, but now I'm looking at my camera. And if I look just to the bottom right corner of my screen, you can see that my eyes have moved. If they're typing, if they're on their phone, if their phone is under their desk and they're texting down here, I can tell. Tutors can tell. And one of the things that we tell tutors when we're training them pedagogically for this is we have them make the video of the student quite large so that you can watch those eye movements. You can see where their focus is. So, that's not something we really worry about. At the same time, if a student has a screen addiction or is really uncomfortable with that sort of video relationship, there are video engagement. There are other ways around it. We can always turn off video and just use audio. We can talk on the phone. But as I'll show you in a little bit, we do have a great platform where we have a shared whiteboard. So we don't actually even need to see the student. We can be talking to them via an audio connection or even just chatting with them and still get a lot done. So just some things I want to throw out there. This isn't necessarily a disaster if you have to engage in remote learning. There are ways to do it well. And if your student can continue a relationship with a teacher that is doing the online learning or start a relationship with a tutor, they theoretically can get through this. So I want to go into a little bit more about our secret sauce of how we have such success with our remote learning. We use a virtual learning platform. It's called Lesson Space. It is not Zoom. Zoom is what most schools and universities are using. And it is a really great software. I mean, we're using it right now. It is a really great video conferencing software. We use it for our business meetings all the time. But I do want to point out that Zoom is not an educational tool. It is a business conferencing tool. And so it's set up for that. There are ways to use it for educational purposes. I know a lot of other tutoring businesses do it, but we prefer this other platform because it has both video and audio. It has a text chat. It has file sharing built in. It has a shared whiteboard for uploading problem sets, doing annotations, and just teaching. There are screen capture options. So one of the things that happens with online tutoring is a tutor will write an equation on a piece of paper and then hold it up to their camera for the student to see, right? If they didn't have a shared whiteboard. Well, this program actually can take a screen grab from your video and then make it an object on the shared whiteboard. So that equation I just wrote is actually an image on the whiteboard that we can then mark up with our online tools. Has really robust features for handling academic material. So there's a word processor built into it. It integrates with Google Docs. It integrates with Microsoft Word and Office. It even has like a coding section where if you're working on coding stuff, you can see each other's code and work on that together. And it also has built-in tech help, which is another challenge that a lot of people face. You know, the Zoom connection might crash or your Wi-Fi is unstable or something's wrong with your computer's microphone. This platform that we use actually will do a diagnostic analysis of anyone who's in the call, and then you can see where things are breaking down, and then you can actually get them the help that they need. So we really love it. I don't know that a lot of other schools are using this, but a lot of tutoring companies do use it. And again, it's called Lesson Space, and that's what we love. The second part of our secret sauce is a coaching approach, which includes the co-creation of goals and accountability. So you'll hear, if you've ever talked to me, we talk about coaching a lot at Signet, and we like to use that word because we feel it's, technically it's what it's called, but also it calls to mind like a sports coach, right? Which I think the analogy there really represents how we see our role in a student's lives. So, if I'm working with a student, I'm coaching them how to do well on their ACT or how to structure a paper well. I'm not writing the paper. I'm not taking the ACT for them. I can't guarantee the outcome of the paper or the ACT score. But what I can do is give them the best skills and drills and practice and help them tweak their approach, learn the kind of overall strategy that they need to learn, and it's up to them to apply it. And it's my job as a coach to help them learn how to do all of that. But they're the ones who's got to take the field and put all of that into action. So we love that word. We also love coaching because it puts the ownership of the challenge on the student. And of course, we have to stay age appropriate. I have a 2-year-old. I'm not really coaching him all that much. But as students get older, they can start to handle more. And if we let them handle more, they are going to learn how to handle more. And that's a real big challenge for parents these days. We like to make sure our students are set up for success. And if that means we have to clear the road for them or manage their homework, become their virtual planner, a lot of parents are willing to do that, right? But I really encourage you to start pushing some of this ownership to your students. The way we do that is, this is a very simplified representation of what we do, but the way we do that is sort of a what, how, when approach, right? So what is the goal? What are we really trying to achieve here? And then you ask, how are you going to achieve this? And we love when that is broken down into clear steps, even a timeline, right? That's where we get the when are you going to do the various steps necessary, right? And you can turn any task list into a what, how, when planner, essentially. Just add 2 columns. You've got the what, here are the tasks. Add a how, and then add a when, right? And then you have to build accountability around this. So first step is getting them to write this down or share it. But additional important questions include, how am I going to know that you are making progress, right? Are you going to be marking off these steps? Is there something we're measuring? Are you doing practice tests and we're looking at your practice scores? How do we know that you're making progress? And it's not just how am I going to know as a parent, how am I going to know you are making progress, but how you as a student, how are you going to know that you are making progress, right? How do we know this is working and you're moving towards your goal? Then how will we know when the goal is achieved? What does this look like when it's done? Right? And it's very important. We found in our business also, it's very important that everyone has a clear idea of what this looks like when it's done. Because if people have different ideas, then there'll be different ideas about whether you got it done or not. So get on the same page about what does this look like when it's done? And then ask, how can I support you in your journey towards achieving this goal? How can I be your coach? Right? What can I do that's going to help you? Are there resources that I can provide to you? Whether that's a series of books or subscribing to some sort of online academy, or getting you a tutor or introducing you to someone in this field that you want to learn more about. Can I help you stay accountable by checking in with you every week? You'll see that I suggest starting a family meeting. That could be a great place to check in on progress of all the goals that anyone in your family has set out for this period of time. And then if there are other ways that you can help, I'm sure you can think of ways that you can help. It's really important to hear from the student how you can help, because then they're not going to feel like you're nagging them because you're just doing the thing that they asked you to do. So that's a pro tip from our coaching practice. And as I said, this is a really simplified version of how we do it. If you want to know more about how we do it, I'm happy to send you information or have a call with you. We're even offering, some free demos of our coaching service. So if you think that would really work for your student or you're curious about it, talk to me and we'll figure that out. Okay, so that's the efficacy of virtual learning. And I want to talk a little bit about how to make the most of this time. And we're going to go back to those, I said the first questions first. What is the goal? What's the effect that you want to have? Is progress the priority? Do you feel like your students really need to keep up with that traditional school timeline or get ahead in some way, be productive in this time? Productive means different things to different people, and different families interpret that in different ways. So I encourage you to have this conversation. What do your kids really need right now? They may just need you to be mom and dad and not a teacher. They may need someone to, get them off their butt and, have them do some exercise inside the house or, eat better or whatever. But this is a conversation in order to really figure out what is it that they need. And then what do they want to learn and explore? Because you'll have an easier time getting them engaged in something they're actually already interested in. So figure out what they want. And what are the things they were getting from school that you can and should try to provide. And those are really important questions because there's some things that you can't provide. You're not going to be able to provide. There are some things that you probably could provide, but should you be the one to provide it? Should another adult be the one to provide it? Should a tutor be the one to provide it? Should a peer be the one to provide it? So there are kind of two parts to this question. It's the what and the who. Because this might go easier if you are not doing everything. Not only from the standpoint of your workload, but also from the standpoint of the student. And what is actually a problem that you need to or should solve right now, right? And I'll just put this out here. Just please remember, it's only been a week for most students. Some students, this transition happened less than a week ago. We need to give ourselves time to figure out new routines, what's important, let the dust settle a little bit and really see clearly about what's most important for our own families right now. Remember that no one learns well when they are anxious or stressed. And everyone is really just doing their best in this moment. I know a lot of parents are frustrated with the communication that they're getting from their school or from their teachers. I myself was just complaining to my husband this morning about the sort of haphazard communication that we're getting, and it's hard to know what we're supposed to be doing. But everyone is really doing their best, and most people are now just learning a whole new method of connecting with people, a whole new pedagogical, theoretical body that they never had to deal with before. And so it is going to take a little time before we get a hang of this. So start with the conversation, and then the rest will follow. So here are some of my recommendations. Of course, recommendations have to be made specific to your situation. So I'm happy, call me, I'm happy to discuss that. That said, you are never gonna replicate the full school experience for your child. So don't even try. And let that go. There was actually a really great op-ed in the New York Times the other day that was called something like, "I refuse to run a coronavirus homeschool." When I read that, it really lifted kind of a weight off of me. So I do recommend you read things like that. If your child's school gave them specific work and deliverables, support them the way you always have with school. But you are going to need to help them build more accountability. And so I point you back to the what, how, when system. Because the more sort of continuity and routine we can cultivate, the better, right? So there's no need all of a sudden, if they do have specific things to do from school, there's no need all of a sudden to take on a new role that you have not played before, beyond this accountability role. If there are few or no expectations from the school, consider the questions on the previous page, like what problems should you actually try to solve right now? And especially the parts about your involvement, right? Does this need to come from you? Could it come from a peer? Could it come from another adult in the student's life? Could it come from a tutor or a teacher in some format? And then getting a little bit more practical, as I said, structure and routine will help with a sense of normalcy and continuity. I recommend trying a weekly family meeting, either like sometime on the weekend, maybe Sunday, where you can look ahead to say, okay, what do we all need to get done this week? When are we doing it? Who's using the laptop at this time or whatever, if you guys are sharing resources, who's doing the grocery shopping, or how are various members of the family contributing to our existence right now. Good eating, exercise, and sleep habits are key for all of you, not just your student. I have found my family, our instinct, we went shopping and bought a ton of stuff that is really shelf stable, because, of course, we're preparing in this crisis. We do have fresh fruits and vegetables, but I wanted to have a stockpile of pasta, for example. But that doesn't mean I should eat pasta for every meal. That's not going to do me any good. So remember that everybody needs to have good eating habits right now. This next one came from a partner of ours, who is an excellent psychologist. Social distancing does not mean emotional distancing. Your kids are going to want to talk to people. They probably already are texting and Instagramming and Snapchatting with their friends, and it's going to mean an increase in screen time, and we're all going to have to be okay with that. It's really important that students have those interactions with you as well. And ease into goal setting. Explore non-academic goals to get the ball rolling, and I'll give you a couple of tools that can help with that. If you're hearing some background information, my cat is in the room. I don't know if he's going to make an appearance on my desk, but he's found something to be distracting with. So this actually came from one of my colleagues. She has a 15-year-old son who within the first day was like, I'm bored. So she wrote him a board list. And as you can see, some of these are slightly academic, like start researching business schools, maybe summer programs, read a book. But a lot of them are just funny or fun. And at the end, she suggests coming up with his own board list, which is great. He may not want to do any of these things here, but he could come up with his own list and share that with his mom, and then they could agree on what he's going to be doing. So this could be a really great exercise for you. This is another one that I saw online that I really loved, and I think everyone in the family could do this, and it could be really interesting. So it's just making a top 10 list for various questions, and you could add whatever questions you want here. So this one has 10 things I love to do, 10 things I want to do even better, 10 academic skills I want to keep practicing, 10 questions I want to answer, 10 people I want to learn about, 10 things I could do to help our family, 10 things our family could do to help me. And this could be a really great exercise to do with your family in maybe your first family meeting. And then share these with each other. And then think about how you can support each other in crossing these things off the list. I think the 10 things I love to do is a really important one too, because we shouldn't just try to be academically productive in this time. We should also engage our hobbies and embrace some of the downtime that we are being forced to have, if you actually have any. So remember to do the things that you love doing, and invest in that, because those are the things that are going to keep us going right now. So I love that this exercise starts with that. So back to accountability, I want to mention that sometimes the parent-child dynamic just makes it difficult for a parent to help with accountability. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. They always feel like you're nagging them, or you always feel like you're looking over their shoulder. There's a sort of lack of trust there, and it just builds resentment, and it's very hard sometimes. And in some cases, students will never listen to the thing that their parent says. And then when I say it, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it's, exactly what mom has been saying for weeks. So sometimes you just gotta acknowledge, okay, there is a dynamic here. We're not gonna break it in this particularly stressful time. So think about alternatives. Consider whether having a peer interaction will help them stay accountable to a goal. Sorry, I missed a word there. Everyone's in the same situation, right? So maybe another friend of theirs who's in their chemistry class would appreciate having a weekly check-in or bi-weekly check-in to say, hey, how are you doing on this concept? Can we help each other with this? Or what did you get for this question? How did you answer it? In a way, it could be a study group. It could be more than one other student. And that could be a really great way to, break up the isolation a little bit, have them connecting with their peers and staying accountable to a goal. An academic coach or a tutor can also help with building structure, accountability, and motivation. As I said, that's something that we can talk about if you're interested in learning more. And I really recommend this book called The Self-Driven Child by William Stixrud and Ned Johnson. Ned Johnson runs an amazing test prep and tutoring company in DC that, we're fairly close friends with him, and William Stixrud is a PhD in, I feel like, adolescent psychology. And it's all about the ways that we deprive our children of opportunities to build accountability and motivation for themselves, and what we can do instead to help them become more self-driven. And I just think if nothing else good academically comes out of this time where school is at home, wouldn't it be amazing if you could plant the seeds of your student becoming more self-driven, becoming more self-motivated, more proactive, where you don't have to chase them down and nag them and make sure the homework is turned in or that they're studying. So that could be a really great thing for you to do in your downtime, is read this book and try to apply some of the lessons from it into your own family. So I also want to give you a sense of what Signet students are doing. The vast majority of our students are continuing to work with their tutors as planned. We shifted everything online on March 16th. And as far as we can see so far, the majority of them are continuing on. We're getting some new requests actually for people who do want to make the most of this time. So a lot of people are starting the diagnostic testing process to see whether the ACT or the SAT is a better fit for them. Even though we don't know when we can take that test next, we are doing online proctoring for these exams, which has worked out great. Students just text us a picture of their bubble sheet after the proctoring is done, and we grade them, and I'm having conversations with parents to help them understand which test is better, how to plan ahead, what kind of prep they should be doing on their own, or whether they really need a tutor or some sort of class or a book here. So that's something that students can do. I recommend that for sophomores really. Freshmen it might be a little early for, but sophomores, this is something that we can do right now. Students who are already in the test prep process are trying not to freak out that their March, April, or May test dates have been canceled. And they are continuing to prep independently, but under the direction of their tutor. So the vast majority of students, for example, who were going to take the March 14th exam, a lot of those got canceled. I've spoken to a lot of parents, and our best advice is to continue preparing. A lot of them took a full practice test on March 14th, even though it wasn't the actual SAT that they were planning to take. We gave them a practice test to take, and they worked with their tutor to identify strengths and weaknesses, things to continue working on. And many of them are seeing this extra time as a windfall. So they may not test till June, but they have a plan. And it's not that they're meeting every week with the tutor. Some of them are, but many of them are doing 2 to 3 weeks of independent work and then having a session with their tutor to kind of check in on their progress and get guidance on their next steps. Many of my tutors are also preparing longer term independent study plans for their students. So, 4 to 5 weeks at a time. Here's the assignments you should do. Here are the things you should be looking out for. Remember these key concepts. So not all of this involves working with somebody else. A lot of students can do this on their own. Most of our students are also still diligently prepping for AP exams. It was announced on Friday that these will be done virtually on a student's personal computer. They will be 45-minute exams, so shorter than the actual APs, or the normal APs, I should say. They will also be let's say prorated. So it's not the full content that the student should have completed by the time the AP exams normally happen. It's going to be limited, focused on the content that they should have covered by the beginning of March. So that should be a relief for most students. Many students are still learning the rest of that material because they think it's important to learn the material. So they're doing that. So that's an interesting thing, and I'll send you to the AP student website where you can actually access, starting next week, I believe, teachers are actually going to be teaching their AP classes online, and you will be able to access those for free. So students can do that. Many students are taking this opportunity to jumpstart their college application process as well. So they're starting to research colleges and brainstorm application essays. Of course, they can't go on college visits, but there are a whole host of resources to use for research and for virtual college visits. And if you would like to see a spreadsheet of those options, I actually have one. The good folks at NACAC, the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, has put together a lot of these sorts of resources, and people are sharing their own resources with other people. So I have great lists of options for virtual tours. Other students that we're working with are catching up on a class that they were feeling behind in. Some students are getting ahead. They know that they're going to take this advanced geometry class next year, so they're starting to work with a tutor to make sure they have everything they need to get started in that class next year. And then a number of students are working on executive functions, organization, and study skills, particularly while school is in this kind of limbo, remote setting. These organizational and accountability kind of skills are the thing that's going to take the biggest hit. You don't have a school to go to where you're in academic mode and everyone else is in that academic setting. You've got to do this at home, where usually you're used to just kind of relaxing and playing video games or watching TV or whatever it is. And so building those skills in this setting is going to be particularly useful for them, especially when school goes back, because they're going to be even more organized and accountable and motivated. So that's one thing that we are seeing a lot of too. And then the other thing that students are doing is they're reading books, which I am so happy to hear. Over the years, I feel like students are reading less and less. I was talking to one of my students last week and I was like, well, what are you doing to fill the time? And he's like, oh, I have all these like law books that I've just been curious about. And so I like reading 4 books. And that just really warmed my heart. I'm so glad people are still reading. You can get books digitally if you can't get into a library. You probably have a bunch of books in your house that your students have never read. So this is a great time to set some goals around reading books too. All right, so that was sort of my presentation here. I know we've only got 10 minutes left, but I want to show you some resources here. Many of these are free, and many of them are free for now as well. So there are a lot of platforms out there that have waived their registration fees or their course fees because of the current crisis. So these are ones that I really recommend. There are thousands of them out there, some, varying quality. But I really love the edX and Coursera massive online courses, the MOOCs. Many of these are actual courses that happen at the best universities in the world, and they're taught by the same professors. And there is a sense of accountability and structure built into them. Those can be really great ways for students to get ahead or learn something new. There are also non-academic online courses. One of my colleagues pointed out something called Domestika today. It's DOMESTIKA.com. And then another one that I've actually used is Udemy, UDEMY.com. And they offer all kinds of art and graphic design and creative courses, even cooking courses. So those are things that could be a really fun goal, something to work on. As I mentioned before, AP is offering free instruction. So apstudents.collegeboard.org, you'll see all the updates about how they plan to roll out the AP exams and the list of courses for which they have the online instruction. OutSchool is a really great learning platform. Prodigy Math is probably one of the best math learning platforms out there for K through 12. Khan Academy has been there forever and has always been free. So there's good stuff there. There's also test prep on Khan Academy for the SAT, and you can kind of do a workaround and get some ACT stuff there. ACT has something called the ACT Academy. There are language learning apps like Duolingo and Babbel, and I'm sure there are lots of other ones. YouTube has some great ways to waste time, but also has some great tutorials. One of the things, if you have younger students, one of the things that I've been really enjoying with my son recently has been something called Cosmic Kids Yoga. And there are these like little 15-minute yoga routines that are set up like stories, and he's just obsessed with it. He loves doing it. And then of course, I am here as a resource to you. You can always email me, Sheila@signeteducation.com. You can call us at the office, 617-714-5262. Most of you are sort of in touch with us in some way already. But I encourage you, just give me a call or drop me a line. If I'm not the right person to answer your question, I can almost guarantee you that someone on our staff or in our network will be the right person, and I'm happy to refer you to that person. But I'm always here to talk you through whatever challenges you're seeing. And just because you're talking to me does not mean you're obligated to do any paid work with us. We really pride ourselves on being able to give out free, high quality information like this webinar. It makes us feel good about what we do. Our mission is to help people through relationships, and this is exactly how we do it. So never be shy to contact me with any question you might have. All right, I want to open it up to questions. I am going to stop my screen share, if I can find the button. There it is. And I'm going to take a look at what's been chatted to me in terms of questions. Some of the questions are a little more logistical. Yes, I will be sending a recording around, and I can send this slide deck as a PDF. We'll send a follow-up email with my contact information, how to sign up for a time to talk with me if you want that. And I can make sure that the spreadsheet of virtual college tours is also shared. Does anyone else have any slightly more specific questions about what to do in this time, or how you can help yourself from going crazy, stop yourself from going crazy when we're all stuck at home? Okay. What's a reasonable amount of time for different ages? That is something that I would have to turn over to an actual expert in sort of child development. I think you mean a reasonable amount of screen time or learning time. I've seen some articles come across that say, what people actually need. And actually our friends in the homeschool world have been really informative about this, because they've had to develop their curricula around those kinds of questions since the beginning of homeschooling. So that would be something that I would defer to somebody else. I can look up an answer and get back to you, Ruth, with what I'm finding. I have another question. Do we have any suggestions for working with two kids of different ages? I can come up with a plan for the 7-year-old or the 4-year-old, but have no idea how to engage both. In that case, my first instinct is, can you get the 7-year-old to teach the 4-year-old some things? Are there things that they could work on together? But maybe at different levels. If one of them has, a drawing that they need to do, can the other one also do a drawing, but about something that is more relevant to them? I mean, honestly, I don't know how to do it. Again, I think our friends in the homeschool world are probably going to be your best resource. But that's something that I can look into and try to get back to you on, Adam. So now we have a question about whether the College Board is adding new dates for the SAT. It seems logical that they will need to add more options, given that there's not going to be a test between January and June, even if they have that test. The College Board has not indicated yet that they are planning to add more dates. I want to put a huge disclaimer out there that what I'm about to tell you is speculation. But because the College Board runs the AP program, and the AP program has decided to offer its exams through some sort of secure module that you can access on your personal computer, I would not be surprised if the College Board finds some way to administer the SAT in that way. And the ACT, I'm assuming, will also find an option to do that. So right now, it doesn't look like they're adding any more dates, but there are students from, the March, April school day, May test dates that will need to test at a different date. And so there's a capacity question there, right? So the best I can say is to continue checking for updates. At Signet, if you're one of our test prep clients, we'll do our best to keep you informed of this, but you can always look at the College Board website for up-to-date information about what they're planning to do. How do we create accountability for a 4th grader? It's very hard to make him do any coursework. Is it necessary to force him to study? Simple answer there is no, it is not necessary to force him to study. In fact, forcing him is probably going to make the situation worse. So I'll point you back to the slides I had here on coaching and determining what is our goal right now. And the goal for you with a 4th grader who has no accountability and is refusing to do schoolwork may be to preserve or better the relationship with academics or even with you. There may be something that is standing in his way of really engaging with what he's learning. It may be a bad interaction with the teacher or some sort of social issue at school. And so now that we're sort of in this vacuum, you have a chance to rebuild his understanding of academics and open his mind to how fun they can be and how rewarding they can be. So I would say that the top 10 list could be a good place to start with him, of saying, or what are the things you like to do? What are the things you want to do better? What are the questions you have about our world? And then go from there to say, okay, let's do some research. Let's read a book about this, or let's learn from somebody, maybe through a YouTube tutorial or a documentary. Let's learn from somebody about this topic. And it won't look like schoolwork, but the student may actually be learning and will actually be engaged. And then when it comes to schoolwork related to those topics, they'll be more engaged. So that's my best advice for you. If you would like to talk about it in detail, of course, feel free to get in touch with me. All right, well, we're coming up on time. If any of you have questions that you were not able to ask, feel free to email me. Again, my email is sheila@signeteducation.com. I'm going to put that in the chat. And my phone number, this is the office line, is right there, 617-714-5262. I wish you all the best of luck in this situation. I hope everyone can stay safe and healthy and find ways to, share special moments with your families right now. And it's okay if school doesn't look the way it always looked. There are other things that are more important right now. And I hope that we all get to, hug our loved ones and, again, stay healthy. That's the priority here. So thank you all. And we'll follow up with the slide deck and other resources that I promised you. Take care.